Hey everyone, Cody Hayes here, and I'd like to welcome you to part 6 of examining the Gospel of Matthew. And we just have a little bit left to cover, and that would be the ending of the Gospel. Upon Jesus' death, Matthew reports that bodies of saints were raised. I'm going to read this portion from the Gospel of Matthew and then comment on it a little bit. Then Jesus cried again with a loud voice and breathed his last. At that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook and the rocks were split. The tombs also were opened, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised. After his resurrection, they came out of the tombs and entered the holy city and appeared to many. Now, the passage is found only in the Gospel of Matthew. So, what can be said about it? Well, there's a number of things that can be said about it, but I'll just say, a few things to keep it simple. Obviously, deceased bodies coming back to life out of a tomb is in the realm of faith. But there is a part of me that thinks that Matthew could have been perhaps wanting to one up Mark a little bit with the power, the force of the death of Jesus, where of course Mark mentions the tearing of the veil in the temple. Matthew does as well, so does Luke. John does not, by mentioning how the death of Jesus, not only that, the bodies of the saints, in this case, of the the Old Testament, you could say the Hebrew Bible doesn't say specifically who they were, but those that would have been part of the old covenant, in this case, come out of their tombs, and then they're seen by many in the holy city, in this case, Jerusalem. But there's also a part of me as I read that makes me think that maybe a copy has changed a little of it, where Matthew seems to imply that upon Jesus' death, they were raised right there and then, but then the author mentions how, well, after his resurrection, in this case, Jesus's resurrection, that's when you saw these individuals. People saw them in Jerusalem. Part of me thinks that a copyist may have added that in, that that's not part of the original Gospel of Matthew, but was added in to put it in harmony with one of the points made in First Corinthians from the Apostle Paul. But in any case, well, guards were placed at Jesus' tomb to quell any doubts on his resurrection. One of the things that's mentioned in the Gospel of Matthew is how the Jewish people, around in Jerusalem, or I guess Judea, Israel, wherever, stated how, well, Jesus' disciples stole his body and then claimed that it was raised. Well, grave robbing is part of the natural world. It can happen. But how can you quell that possibility that his disciples stole his body, placed guards at his tomb? Well, how were they able to get past the guards? Of the canonical Gospels, Matthew is the only one that records guards being at the tomb. There is the non-canonical Gospel of Peter that could have been a Gnostic text. that's disputed, and it arguably was written. I would say we only have portions of it for the record. There's only portions of it. But it was arguably written, I would say, after the Gospel of Matthew. The resurrection scene is a lot more higher Christology than what you would find in Matthew's Gospel, which makes me think it was written afterwards, possibly, you know, late first century at earliest. And guards are present in that account. Well, then there's a final message that the resurrected Jesus gives to his apostles. And in this account, Jesus and the resurrected Jesus tells his apostles, go forth and make disciples of all nations, baptize those in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, maintain, preach, what I told you, what I instructed you, and how I will be with you until the end of this age, the end of the age. Well, that's essentially it for the Gospel of Matthew. So if you do have any questions, please send me an email. Till then, take care.